The information provided in this podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as personal advice. Always consult with a qualified professional or expert in the relevant field for personalised advice tailored to your specific situation.
Welcome to the Wealth Guide podcast, where we bring you insights and expertise from the world of financial planning and wealth management. I'm your host, Gianni Musumeci, and today we have an exceptional guest joining us, Regmi. Ray has been a financial advisor for over 15 years and is the founder of Ryker Capital. His mission in founding Ryker Capital was to ensure that every piece of advice provided to clients within the group meets the highest standards and that all clients are treated like family. With a Bachelor of Business and a Diploma of Financial Planning under his belt, Ray is also an expert in self-managed superannuation funds. Today we'll be diving into Ray's extensive experience in financial advice. We'll explore what led him to his career path and the motivations that drive him to continue in this field. Ray will share his passion for developing strategies tailored specifically to his clients' unique circumstances and why he believes personalized financial advice is so crucial. We'll also discuss the specific financial challenges his clients face and how Ray helps them overcome these obstacles to reach their financial goals. Through his thorough analysis and innovative strategies, Ray ensures that each client receives a customized approach that best suits their needs and aspirations. So sit back, relax, and join us for an insightful conversation on the Wealth Guide podcast with our esteemed guest, Regmi. Let's get started. So hi Ray, thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Gianni.
I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about your experience and really what led you to become a financial advisor.
Thanks, Gianni. My journey in financial planning has been very interesting. When I was studying in university, I was working part-time for an accounting firm. And when I sort of worked in accounting for a firm for that part of 1 or 2 years, I really thought to myself going, do I really want to be doing this? So as I graduated out of university, I applied to a variety of different roles within different banks, and I was lucky enough to sort of secure a role with CBA. I started off as a branch manager. I was 22. I did my rounds, obviously, they show you around the branches and explain how things work. But all of a sudden, here you are as a 22-year-old handed a key of the branch to go, you go run that branch. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And it was a bit of a shock to the system because obviously you've got these experienced people who've been in the branch land forever and ever. And here you are as a grad position, 22-year-old, telling them what to do. It just wasn't going to go down well.
Sounds quite intimidating.
Oh, absolutely. I stepped in they're looking me up and down going, 22-year-old university graduate, how are you going to tell me how to run a branch? Yeah. But anyway, I'm like, obviously sooner or later I realized they're the taskmasters and they knew what to do with their task pretty well. Mm-hmm. My job is obviously to run a branch and more lead through the management side. And I sort of love that aspect of it. But my heart really was in financial planning. So after doing a small stint there, I sort of worked my way in CBA to be working in power planning. And then power planning essentially is you write technical strategies. Mm-hmm. And obviously you've come from power planning side yourself. So essentially what it allows you to do is to sort of be a hands-on approach on how do you work those technical strategies? How do they correlate? How do you sort of put superannuation tax laws, personal tax laws, and if you're doing superannuation or insurances, how do you put and mix match of all of these strategies together? So that was part of obviously learning in power planning, which was fantastic. And then obviously you learn the soft skills through the branches, and then I ended up becoming a financial planner soon after I finished my career in power planning.
I had a very similar financial upbringing as well, or career upbringing where I started in branch land and then I moved into power planning as well. And if anything, I found that instrumental in understanding clients and financial behaviors and that sort of stuff. How did that sort of fuel you, if anything, like the people aspect of it into financial planning?
And it was very interesting because you needed to learn both. You needed to learn the soft skills and you needed to learn the technical skills. So I think that was a perfect breeding ground as to how do you create a very good, technically sound financial planner. Because technical ability is you need it, right? Because you're dealing with rules and legislations all the time. So that was a perfect sort of strategy where you sort of learn from power planning those aspects of it, but then again you learn the soft skills from branches. And I love dealing with clients, and I love working with I love working with clients. So it was, for me, it was a perfect segue to go, let's mesh this together now that I've learned all these skill sets and move right into the role. So.
No, I hear you 100%. And often I've got a soft spot for power planners as well, because I would say that your average power planner will write 1 to 2 plans per day, whereas a financial advisor will probably do, a few a week, 3 to 5 a week. So as a paraplanner, you've got a bigger volume of technical ability, if anything, and that experience really leverages itself to financial planning as well. Did you find that as well? Like you were churning through plans and you got a better sort of volume of advice?
So as far as the volume of advice went, I think you learn from the volumes quite quickly as to what different strategies you need to understand.
Yeah.
Now in financial planning, if you look at the strategies, there is superannuation, there's insurances, there's tax planning, there's aged care, there is Centrelink strategies, there's UK pensions, there's aged care. So there's a variety of the combination of strategies and self-managed super funds, by the way, which is another complex field in its own. But you start to sort of learn how these moving pieces work along with estate planning and depending on what client wants, and you're trying to sort of move different goalposts to sort of make those strategy work and get a better financial outcome for the clients. So that was, yes, absolutely a perfect way to learn from the volume what strategies you can sort of work and put those strategies together very quickly.
Yeah, very good. No, and you talked about doing accounting in university and not really aligning with it. And I completely understand because accountants are a special breed. But what was it about financial advice that motivated you to get into that field?
See, for me, it was wearing different hats at different times and using some of the different strategies at different times. For me, accounting was great. I'm like, no disrespect to accounting. I'm like, I love doing accounting, but that was to me, even that was a good base role to understand the structures of individual companies, partnerships, or depending on what type of tax structures you're looking at. So that was already a best segue. But now when you sort of utilize some of that knowledge from the accounting, power planning, and then obviously the soft skills to how to sort of address these strategies, it was an absolute magic, right? Because you can now create some very fantastic strategies for clients leading to perfect good outcomes.
100%. Yeah. And it, like you said, it is that mix of technical ability and soft skills, especially when it comes to dealing with clients. I wanted to ask a little bit more about those soft skills. What are some of the soft skills that you've had to develop over the years in order to have those conversations with clients?
See, I think conversations with clients can be quite challenging sometimes because obviously you want to make sure that when you're utilizing those soft skill sets, you're able to explain how some of these strategies impact them. Not taking action, what it would cost them, as opposed to sort of taking the appropriate strategies, the financial difference that it will make for them over a period of time. So to be able to sort of bring that conversation down to their level for them to understand what superannuation is. For most people, they don't understand super. They don't understand what a contribution is. They don't even understand how they would put money in and create a tax deduction strategies for themselves. I think a perfect case scenario was a client that we were recently working on who sold the investment property, and they had this large capital gain tax bill, and they're going, well, I've just have to pay it. I said, no, Mr. Client, there is strategies there that will help you minimize some of this CGT and also build your wealth. So for them, it was an aha moment to go, well, I never knew this would happen. So when you're sort of trying to work with a client, having to explain these strategies is key crucial, and you have to really bring it down to their level at soft skills phase, which is very, very crucial.
Well, it's not that they don't understand. A lot of people probably wouldn't understand, but I think the fact is they don't want to understand as well. Like it's just so complex and arduous and difficult to navigate as well. If anything, I think that's one of the benefits of having a financial advisor is you don't have to get up to speed. Like they're there to educate you and all that around, the impacts of their financial situation.
True. Obviously, there's constantly moving parts with legislation, which is ever so complex. And then there's grandfathering of the previous rules. So there's a lot of moving parts with different strategies that you look at, whether it be property, whether you look at shares, whatever the underlying asset would be. So when you're looking at these intricacies of different strategies, sometimes client will go, look, please look after it. But it's my job as an advisor still to educate, to make them understand what strategies you're implementing and what's the reason of you doing them. For the most of the clients, yes, you're absolutely right. They'd go, well, Ray, you've looked after us. Can you please make sure that these strategies are taken care of and help us put in the best financial position that we can be?
Yeah, very good. And how does the conversation go around goals? How do you sort of help clients articulate their goals? Because I imagine that the conversation can be very difficult, but especially if you don't know how to explain what your goals are. Because I can imagine that a client would come in and the conversation will go one or two ways. They'd either say, I want to retire tomorrow, or I want $1 million in the bank. How does that conversation go?
That conversation is always very interesting because obviously when you're trying to get them to articulate goals, sometimes they haven't even thought about their goals. So when you sort of get them to a point where you need to start listing things out for them to go, well, okay, we were 45 years of age. We will need X amount of dollars for you to retire on. So if you're 65 and we only got about $500,000 as an example, how do you think this will provide for your retirement phase? Because I sort of try to get them to picture a retirement as a long holiday. So the recent example I used was going, well, look, imagine you go on a holiday today. How much would you spend? They go, well, look, last holiday we spent about $15,000. So that was in a space of 3 weeks, you spent $15,000. Now I want you to think about retirement. It's a 25-year holiday.
Yeah.
How would you cater for this? So sometimes they have never thought about that. And when you put things into picture based on how they perceive things, the goals and objectives then start to flow, and the real concern around how they should be addressing it starts to flow. So you just got to get them to that stage of critical thinking as to what their goals and objectives should be. But obviously it will change for different clients depending on life stages they're at.
You'd almost need to moonlight as a travel agent, I think.
Yeah.
No, look, and that is the other thing as well. Like I often say that when a client comes in, they're oblivious to their goals or they don't understand really how to articulate their goals. And part of it is, as an advisor, you need to make them aware of these impacts as well. Like, you need to upgrade your white goods every 5 to 10 years. You need to change your car every 10 to 15. Or how are you going to retire? Like, so often, if anything, you're providing them the benefit of hindsight because you've done that for other clients, if anything.
Exactly. And I think you can use a lot of that with the different life stages, as I mentioned. So goals and objectives for someone who's in 35 to 55 bracket would be completely different to someone who's 55 to 65 or someone who's at the aged care or about to go into the aged care facility. So things change for different people, and articulating those goals depends on obviously the experiences you've had over your working life as an advisor. And there are some blind spots, if you like, that you sort of like to highlight to the clients going, hey, have you thought about this? I think it's a key crucial part that you need to think about. So as an example, one of the key things that we were looking at for a retiree client was, look, you've got X amount of dollars in super. Unfortunately, your wife obviously passed away last year, and the fact now is that money will then pass on to kids as you decide that you want the money to go to your 2 kids. What is the impact for them tax-wise from your superannuation or your pension? So some of these blind spots clients have never thought about. And when you provide an example of what that looks like, what potential tax they might pay, that strategy now changes all over again.
Yeah.
And for someone like that, when we have a look at cash out recontribution strategies or different form of bucketing strategies that you would do to make sure that, you address those goals and objectives, or sometimes you're almost creating a goal and objective for that client.
Today's episode of the Wealth Guide podcast is proudly sponsored by Ryker Capital. In a world full of financial uncertainties, Ryker Capital understand the importance of safeguarding your lifestyle and the well-being of your loved ones. That's why we're committed to providing you with personally tailored insurance plans and financial advice that aligns with your unique needs and goals. Ryker Capital is your guide in the complex world of superannuation and retirement planning. Our team of experts are dedicated to helping you navigate these complexities with ease and confidence. We're here to empower you with the knowledge and strategies you need to build wealth and secure your future. At Ryker Capital, we offer a comprehensive range of services designed to optimize your superannuation. We work closely with you to determine the best contribution strategy, regularly review your superannuation fund, set achievable financial goals. Our coaching and consulting services ensure your financial plan stays on track with regular reviews to adjust to your changing circumstances and aspirations. Don't leave your financial future to chance. Take control today with Ryker Capital. Contact us for an obligation-free discussion about your financial plan by calling us on 1300 179 537. Let us help you secure your finances because you deserve it. Ryker Capital, your trusted partner in financial success. Is that the aspect of financial planning that you're most passionate about? Is it the education, transparency, upskilling the financial literacy of your clients? Is that what you're most passionate about?
I absolutely love that part, but I think it's the journey that you go with the client and the financial improvement that you have seen over the years with them, right? So when you sort of go them from milestones to milestone and then you've been with that journey, they almost treat you like your family now. And all of a sudden, you get invited to the weddings.
I was going to ask you, you've been to any weddings lately?
I've been to one of my clients' wedding awesome. Almost about a month ago. So
I think if anything, that's a sign of a good financial advisor.
It is, but I think the fact that they trust you, the fact that they want to work with you. The fact that you then get further recommendations for their friends and family and so on and so forth, I think, that makes me really happy that they actually trust me enough to then recommend me their family and friends.
I think if anything, that's the ultimate compliment. Yeah,
exactly.
Very good. And look, there is that element of transparency as well. I often think that I use the analogy dance floor versus balcony view. So look, as a client, you're there on the dance floor, you can only really see what's in front of you. But your advisor, if anything, is up there on the balcony, having a look at the landscape, seeing what other players are out there. Because as a client, you might be in a good financial situation, but if anything, your advisor might be able to guide you on how you can retire sooner or how you can meet your goals quicker. Other people might not be in that better landscape. They might need that extra helping hand to get them on the right track. And it's really all about that conversation that happens at the beginning.
It does, but also if clients are able to, if you want to sort of project out of goals for them over the short, medium and long term, that plays a very key part as to if you've got someone who's 35-year-old, they're going, we want to create a bit of child savings for our client for their education, or perhaps I want to save for my retirement, or I want to pay off my property sooner. Or one of the key ones that obviously we had from our clients is going, I'm 35, I don't want to be working for the rest of my life and keep paying the taxes that I'm paying for the next 25, 30 years. I need to really address my goal to build wealth and also efficiently use my tax money to sort of save on taxes. So I think these are very key aspects for these kind of goals, and measurable goals and immeasurable goals. So you sort of put that in perspective with a client to sort of work on those different strategies at different point in time of their lives.
And I tell people that, look, you'll pay if you see an advisor or not. You'll pay through your poor financial habits, or like you'll pay to see an advisor.
Yeah.
And that being said, we talked a little bit about measurable and measurable goals, but what are some of the immeasurable goals that can't be bought that a financial planner can give you?
So I suppose, look, the immeasurable goals would be the peace of mind that the clients get, and someone's keeping them accountable, and someone's keeping a check on them to make sure that the certain structures that we were meant to do or create, or some of the financial line items that we were able to meet in 12 months have been done. As an example, going back to the tax strategies for this particular client, we wanted to, their goal was to obviously save $5,000 or $6,000 in their taxes every year. So we looked at some of the contribution strategies towards the May, June period, where they sort of put in X amount of dollars into the superannuation as part of their contribution strategy. And we were then able to help them sort of maximize not only their superannuation retirement balance, but also they were able to get a large level of money back out in tax return.
Yeah.
So that was quite fantastic strategy for them. Now you use that and you compound that over the years, there was a significant amount of retirement balance, which otherwise he would have paid that tax every single year and not utilize this strategy.
Yeah, and a lot of those strategies would be oblivious to the everyday client as well.
Absolutely, and there's further, like I mentioned before, there's further legislation changes around it with superannuation, and have been in the past few years. So holding client accountable and obviously sort of working through those goals and objectives and legislative changes with them every year plays a key vital role.
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, the other aspect of financial advice is people will have those barbecue chats, or they'll look up stuff on the internet, or they'll even go to AI tools, the ChatGPT, whatever, and they might, look up financial scenarios or strategies, but that might not necessarily be applicable to their financial situation as well. What are some of the myths that you've had to sort of dispel?
It's quite an interesting one. Look, obviously we've had clients who've sort of done the ChatGPT and got the whole structure wrong and ended up paying $15,000 additional in tax.
Yeah.
If anything, I think, look, AI is a great function for education, and we love AI for that part, because overall it becomes a great education tool. But what will be with regards to your personal income, personal taxes are very different to each individual that exists. Whether you're employed, whether you're self-employed, whether you have a family trust, whether you're a company, all these different varying factors will have a different impact on you. And how do you sort of work through those different structures with customers will be completely different based on an individual level.
And I think as well, the biggest issue with a tool like AI is it won't be able to have those emotional conversations around how do you prioritize goals, and what does financial independence look like to you, and all those sort of questions as well.
Whilst AI can answer some of that based on numbers that you actually put in, but it will not exactly identify the strategies or the structures based on the legislation. It'd be very hard for them to personalize those strategies to their goals and to base on their priorities. But not only that, is the strategies that you haven't thought about is the big part. And then when you highlight some of those strategies, your structures there, I think that's the key role that advisors play in helping clients map that out.
We've talked about, just to bring it back a little bit, we talked a little bit about a few different demographics. Do you have a target demographic, or do you have a demographic that you see day in, day out?
Look, the most common, we work with all demographics, so there is no certain demographics that I don't. Obviously, with aging population, we're seeing a lot more of retirement strategies, and purely for the fact that as there's aging population, most of them are worried about the Centrelink side. And the key thing they want to make sure is that whilst they have some amount of money, they don't want to be reliant completely on their money, because they're ever so worried about completely eating into their superannuation and will leave them with no cash later on in life, and they don't want to outlive the money. So I think this is where what we're seeing a lot of is creating some good Centrelink structures or strategies with the client, with age pension or disability support pension, where they can not only sort of pull the lever on the bit from the government side with the income, but also from their own personal side, which creates a bit of a longevity in their superannuation pension, which will add another 10, 15 years, which didn't have before.
Yeah. And I'd imagine that given we're in a cost of living crisis and high inflationary period, that would be a big concern for a lot of families at the moment.
It is. And it's specifically if you look at some of the expenses now with the utilities, the grocery bills, and just basic daily living, it's quite immense.
Yeah.
The impact that it's having on people is quite dramatic. So to get some of those benefits, like I mentioned with the retirement planning clients, where you get with the Centrelink benefits, you get all the ancillary benefits, right? So you get the no rates, and your water bills reduced, your power bills reduced. So these strategies go a very long way to sort of curb the inflation and obviously provide that relief that governments offered to most of the retirees.
Once we have articulated those goals, how do we sort of go about putting together a strategy to help them reach their goals?
So once you sort of identify the goals, I think the key part is how do you structure them? What do you need to have a good understanding of? Because each set of rules are very different. You've got personal tax, you've got superannuation tax rules, you've got the Centrelink rules, and then you've got the estate planning. So now what are you trying to do is trying to put all these four pieces of puzzle together. Estate planning being how do you want the money to be transferred in a very tax effective environment to their families, and who should it go to? You're trying to work out the Centrelink strategies given the assets they've got. How can we structure the assets in a certain way so they can maximize their Centrelink benefit? And then how do we sort of not only reduce their personal taxes, but also reduce paying any taxes in their superannuation. Most people don't even realise that they are paying earnings tax in their super fund. So essentially, how do we sort of curb that for them and they keep the most of their dollar to themselves? So essentially, I think you then sort of putting all these strategies together and then sort of creating the plan and then explaining bits and pieces as you go along.
Yeah, because I think that especially with social media lately, a lot of people will listen to finfluencers or, again, misinformation, and they'll get into an investment. But often I tell people getting into an investment is easy. It's the back end. It's getting out of the investment. Like, how do you mitigate some of those exit costs, capital gains, that sort of stuff? And that's what you really need a financial advisor for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Look, obviously, yes, the finfluencer side, there are quite a few we've seen over the years, and I feel sorry for some of the customers that obviously have been exposed to it, who have also suffered a bit of a loss as a result of it. We always recommend that you speak to a qualified financial planner or financial advisor who sort of has relevant qualifications to provide that level of advice, but also be able to sort of manage some of the tax burden that sort of comes with the investments. It's great to make an income, but it's also how do you then make sure that you keep most of the income to yourself and you're not paying that out in tax bill.
And what do you find is most effective? Is there a sort of an approach that you take to assessing somebody's financial strategy, reaching their goals? What sort of approach do you find is most effective when you're speaking to your clients?
Highlighting their goals and objectives. I think that's the key part. Unless and until you have a bit of a roadmap to go where you want to be. And if you don't have that, then everything else is hypothetical. You don't have a scenario to work with. So having a bit of a roadmap, and if you don't have one, identifying it, or perhaps working through within the family to go, well, as a family, what is our roadmap? What is our financial goal? What do we want to achieve? And then you sort of put layers and strategies around it to sort of how do you achieve those roadmap and goals.
The more we talk, the more I feel you're more and more like a travel agent. Until you know the destination, you don't know how you're going to get there. You don't know what you're going to do. You don't know how you're going to get back. Like it's more and more like a travel plan, if anything.
To that, exactly. But also you almost feel like a bit of a doctor, because you need to understand all of the part of the circumstances around you before you can actually provide provide a diagnosis of what you have and how do you treat it, right? So it's very essential that you understand the whole aspect of a client's financial situation and scenario before we can actually provide a diagnosis to go, this is the way to treat out of it.
Yeah. And then there's the regular check-ins as well to ensure that they're continuing along their journey and they're still tracking towards their goals, or even if the goals are the same.
Exactly. I'm like, the goals people will change all the time, and that's okay, because as your family dynamics change, as your personal income or personal expenses change, those dynamics will change. It's how you sort of move around and pivot around those strategies to then make sure that you still meet your milestone that you wanted to achieve.
Ray, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate you having a chat.
Thank you, Johnny.
If anyone wants to get a hold of you to ask any further questions on what we discussed today, how's the best way to do so? Please
feel free to reach out through our website at rykercapital.com.au or through our hotline number.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Johnny.
If you enjoy the content we bring you on the Wealth Guide podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and share with your community. Let's grow this community together and make financial literacy accessible to all.